Hi, welcome back to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith. In this episode, we're going to go over the remaining chips in the bank that we didn't cover in the last episode, as well as talk to you about a couple of extra rules, and then I'm going to invite Luke down here to join me, and he and I are going to go over the character chips that we're each going to start with in our bag at the beginning of the game. So to start, I want to talk a little more about crashing, counter-crashing, and then counter-crashing. So you'll remember I said if you play a crash gem, like this one here, you're able to pick a gem from your gem pile and send it over to your opponent's gem pile. Now they have a chance to react, and let's say that I reacted by playing a double crash gem. So now I'm able to pick two of my gems and send them sailing back over to my opponent. These gems will meet midair and they will crash into one another, and these two gems will cancel out and they'll go back to the bank, and then this one is free to sail through into my opponent's gem pile. So you can see, even though I wasn't the attacker, I'm actually going to be the one to end up putting a gem into my opponent's gem pile. However, now my opponent, if they want, can counter-crash, because we now have a new gem that's going to fly into their gem pile. So let's just say they chose to play a crash gem. So now they can send one of their gems flying back, and these would cancel each other out. Let's say my opponent, though, had actually played a double crash gem. So they're able to put another gem in the air towards me. So these ones would meet each other and cancel out. But now I have a new gem flying over towards me. Well, it so happens I have another crash gem. So now I'm counter-crashing and sending this gem this way. And these are meeting and canceling out. So you can see it can go back and forth, back and forth. The important thing to remember, though, is that you can only react once to each event. So what that means is if someone crashes me, I can then counter-crash once. I couldn't play multiple counter-crash gems. Like I couldn't play multiple crash gems and try to crash, three more gems into their gem pile. One thing I want to mention about the double crash gem is that normally, of course, you can crash two gems from your gem pile with this chip. But sometimes you might only have one gem in your gem pile and still want to play this because you'd like to be able to at least crash that gem. Well, you can, but basically you're wasting the second gem that you'd normally be able to crash. And in that case, instead of collecting $2, you'd only be collecting $1. So think of that plus 2 as really saying plus 1 per gem that you crash. Now here's something about a 3 to 4 player game where everyone's playing for themselves that I want to tell you about. Remember what I said. As soon as one player at that table has 10 or more points in their gem pile at the end of their turn, the game is going to end, and the player with the least number of gem points in their gem pile is going to win. So you can imagine a situation where you're sitting at the table, you realize the game is about to end, and you don't want it to because you know you're not in a winning position. Well, there's something you can do about it. Let's say for a moment that I crashed a ridiculous number of gems at a player. Let's say I was crashing 8 gems at a player, and they already had 9 gems in their gem pile. Everyone at the table realizes this game is probably going to end, especially once they realize that that other player isn't able to crash back at me. They're not able to counter-crash. Well, the game is not necessarily over. The player to the left of me has the first opportunity to step in and counter-crash for that other player. So they could play a crash gem or a double crash gem from their hand, throw some gems from their gem pile back at me, which may cancel out some of the gems I was sending over to that other player. Now, if that player to my left is not able to step in and help out, keep going around the table, and each player in turn is going to have a chance to react. But as soon as one player reacts, that's it. That player then reacts. Everyone else can't pile on, because remember, you can only have one reaction per event. But as soon as someone does react and they counter-crash and some of those gems come back at me, if, let's say, some of those gems are going to go into my gem pile, then I have the opportunity to counter-crash, and if I don't, we keep going around the table, and other people can jump in and counter-crash for me. So you can see, it can really get crazy there after a while. People countering for each other, trying to keep the game from ending before they have a chance to win. But don't forget, the game can't go on indefinitely because we have that panic time situation where as soon as some of these piles in the bank are depleted, we're going to be anting more and more chips into our hand at the beginning of each turn, and that means the game is absolutely going to end at some point. But it's just an interesting dynamic to keep in mind in those multiplayer games. So I want to cover these puzzle chips in order from lowest to highest in terms of cost, and this one costs 1, and it's called Risky Move. This one says you put a gem from your hand into your gem pile. If you do, gain a gem of 1 higher value, and you get an additional $3 during the buy phase. So let me just give you an idea of what this would look like. If you play the risky move for your action, you would then have to take a gem from your hand and place it into your gem pile. So let's say I put this 2 into my gem pile. Well, now I'm allowed to gain from the bank a gem of 1 higher value. So I put in a 2, I can draw out a 3. Now when a chip says to gain another chip, you place the gain chip into your discard pile. You don't put it into your hand. Gain means it goes to the discard pile. So on a future turn, I'm going to be able to potentially draw this 3 instead of the 2. As well, I'm going to have an extra $3 during the buy phase. So this is definitely a risky move, but there's a pretty good reward to go along with it. Everyone likes a sale, so next we have sale prices. This one costs 2. It immediately gives you an additional $1 during the buy phase, but more importantly, all of the chips in the bank cost 1 less this turn to a minimum of 1. So if something costed 3, then you could buy it for 2. If something cost 1, you'd still have to pay at least the 1 for it. The next chip is a red banner chip called knockdown. This one costs 2 to buy it from the bank, and it allows you to play another action this turn as long as the chip that you're playing has a purple banner on it. Then you choose an opponent, and that opponent discards a chip. In other words, they take it from their hand and they put it into the discard pile on their play mat, and they can't play a purple crash reaction this turn. Remember, gems like this crash gem here have the purple shield on it. That means you can play this in response to someone crashing you. So basically, if you know that you're going to be crashing someone this turn, maybe you're going to actually play a crash gem as the next action at your opponent, then this way you can shut them down from being able to respond to that crash. So very useful that way. And you'll notice this also has a red fist on it. That little symbol just denotes that this particular chip is an attack chip, and it's going to have some kind of negative effect on your opponent. Next we have sneak attack. This is another attack chip. It costs 3. It allows you to play another red banner action chip this turn. Then you ante a 1 gem into each opponent's gem pile. So because this action says to ante a 1 gem, you're not taking it from your own gem pile and putting it into your opponent's gem pile. Instead, you're taking it from the bank and placing it in your opponent's gem pile. And so if you had multiple opponents, each opponent would be taking a 1 gem from the bank. Next up we have draw 3. It costs 3, and you'll never guess, but yes, you get to draw 3 chips from your bag to your hand. This one also costs 3. It's called Gem Essence. For this one, you trash a gem from your hand, and if you do, you can then play up to 4 different actions as long as each action matches one of these colors. So we've got a new term on here called trashing, and what that means is taking a gem and putting it back in the bank. So in this case it says to trash a gem from your hand, so I could trash this 1 gem here, put it back into the bank, but now I'm able to play up to 4 different action chips. So I could play a blue banner 1, a brown banner 1, then a red banner 1, and a purple banner 1. And it doesn't matter what order I do those in, I now am able to play 4 different unique actions during this turn. And as you can see, some of these actions also allow you to play new actions, so you could really get a lot of chips out on the table right now if you have them in your hand. Next up we have Self-Improvement, which is a blue banner puzzle chip. It costs 4, and this one's interesting because it's broken into 2 sections. We have a main and a reaction. So main means you would take advantage of this particular section of the action chip when you play it from your hand during your turn. And what it says is to trash a chip from your hand or discard pile. So the value of trashing chips is it allows you, as you start collecting better and better chips, to get rid of the older and not so great chips from your hand. So once you start collecting some 3 gems and 4 gems, you might want to get rid of some of those 1 gems just so that when you draw chips, you know your buying power is always going to be the most it can possibly be, rather than getting filled up with a bunch of those 1s that are still in your bag. The reaction means you can play this chip during your opponent's turn when they play a red fist attack. That's what the blue shield means. You can play a blue shield reaction when someone plays a red fist against you. So in this case, you can, after your fist attacked, then draw 3 chips into your hand. This next one is real straightforward. It's called 1-2 punch. It costs 4, and it allows you to take 2 additional actions. And because these arrows are black, it means they can be actions of any kind. And here's one called One of Each. It costs 5 to buy it from the bank, and when you play it from your hand, you're then able to take an additional action, bank a chip in your hand at the end of your turn, During your buy phase, you'll get an additional $1, and you're able to draw an additional chip during your turn. Now, normally the options on a chip are resolved in order from top to bottom, left to right. But keep in mind, when you see a plus arrow, what it means is sometime during your action phase, you can use an arrow. It does not mean you must immediately play an action. So this means you could first draw an additional chip and then decide which additional action you might like to play, because maybe the chip that you draw will be the action that you want to play that turn. All right, the last of the puzzle chips in our bank is called Combos Are Hard, and it costs 6 to buy it from the bank. It says, if this is the only action you play this turn, you gain any 2 different non-exclamation mark chips from the bank, you end your action phase, and then you have to trash this chip. So it's a one-use chip, but it is incredibly powerful because it allows you to grab 2 of any other kind of chip in the bank, as long as that chip does not have an exclamation mark in the banner. Now, this particular chip is not available in the setup that we've created for our playthrough, but these exclamation mark chips just denote that this chip is incredibly powerful. It even says in the rule book, look on these and despair. So in this situation, we don't have to worry about it. Basically, you can grab any 2 chips you want from the bank. So that could be a 4 gem. It could be a double crash gem, which normally costs 9. So this may seem like an incredibly powerful chip, and it is, but you got to remember the timing on this. First of all, you're going to have to be able to pay for it. That's going to cost 6 gems. You have to get 6 gems in your hand during a turn, or play some other chips that maybe reduce the cost of the gems in the bank. Then once you buy those 2 chips, they're going to go in your discard pile. You have to wait until you reach into your bag and there's no chips there before you're able to then dump those back into your bag. Then you're going to have to wait until you draw them from your bag again in order to be able to play those new awesome chips that you've collected. So you have to be careful. Early in the game, this is certainly very powerful, but later in the game, while you're waiting for those awesome chips to come back around, maybe your opponents will have already beaten you. So certainly something to consider because it's a great chip, but you also have to know when to play it. Now, this chip is not in our bank, but I wanted to show it to you because it has one other phrase on it that we haven't covered yet that says ongoing. So this one allows you, it's called Secret Move, it allows you to take an additional action, and then it has an ongoing effect. You're going to get to piggy bank each turn. But you have to discard this when you buy a purple chip. So whenever you play a gem from your hand that has the ongoing keyword, you actually place it in the ongoing section of your playmat, just to remind you that this has an ongoing effect that will occur turn after turn until the ongoing effect is canceled by something on the card. So this says as soon as you purchase a purple gem, so as soon as you say purchase a combine, then these will go into your discard pile and this effect will end.
Hey guys, I'm here!
Yes, you are here, and you are?
Luke.
This is Luke, my son. He's going to join me for the playthrough of Puzzle Strike, but what we want to show you now is the 2 different characters that we've picked and the chips that go with them. Who wants to go first?
Me!
Okay.
My character's name is Geiger, and this token is called Future Sight and allows him to get 2 chips from the bag and piggy bank 2 chips. This chip is called Research and Development, and I get to take an extra action and I get to trade a chip in my hand with a purple chip from my bag. And this chip is called It's Time for the Past. I get an extra action and I get to put a non-exclamation mark puzzle chip from my discard pile into my hand.
Alright, Luke, you had some good chips there, but I've got some good ones too. My character's name is Grave, and this first chip is called Martial Mastery. It allows me to take an additional action, and then I can trash a non-purple gem chip from my hand and gain a chip costing exactly 2 more. So let's say I had this draw 3, which normally costs 3. Yeah, I could trash that, put it back in the bank, and then I could gain this 1 of each, which costs exactly 2 more, and I would put that in my discard pile. Next is Versatile Style. So this one I have to choose one. I either get an additional action and I can piggy bank, or I get an additional $2 during the buy phase, or I can draw 2 chips. And next we have Reversal. This is one of my favorites. If you play it during your own turn, you get to draw 2 chips. However, you can also play it as a reaction. So notice the purple shield here. So if someone crashes at me, I can do a crash react, which will allow me to play this chip as a crash gem to counter gems sent to a player. So keep in mind, I can't play this during my turn to crash gems at a player. But if someone crashes gems at me, I can then react by playing this and crash some gems back at them. Okay, now you've all seen the chips that we're going to be using in this playthrough, as well as our character chips, and you now know all the rules except for one rule. That trashing chip rule. When you trash a chip, you cannot trash one of your character chips. But let's put these character chips in our bag. Let's shake them up, and we'll draw our opening hand of 5 chips. Now, you guys, the viewers, are going to be playing along with me, so I'm going to actually show you my opening hand right now. Okay, so here's my opening hand. You can see my 5 chips. I'll give you another look at these at the end of the episode. So hopefully you found these 2 episodes helpful in teaching you how to play the game Puzzle Strike and giving you a chance to see how some of these chips are going to work during the gameplay. Hope you'll join us for the playthrough. Until the next episode, thanks for watching.